standards here, it's so much higher. So, and I would like to welcome everyone who's joining us today for the COSA member webinar. I think we'll give everybody just another minute to get on. But while we're waiting, why don't you go ahead and say hello in chat and let us know what institution you're with. If you want, you can tell us what the weather's doing. I'm Lisa Johnston. I'm the administrative coordinator with COSA. And here in Roswell, New Mexico, today it's a little overcast. We're actually having slightly cool weather for us. We're only going to get in the upper 80s, low 90s, which is a great relief from the days of 100 and 110. So we've got a good week going. So anyway, welcome to everybody who's joining us, and we will get started here in just a minute.
While it's quiet, I can tell you it's 71 and sunny here in Utah, so we've got nice weather today.
That's always nice. This time of year, you can have some really wonderful weather, so that's great. All right. You know what? I think we've got a lot of great people. They've got good weather, a lot of places too. Lots of sunny weather. Bismarck, Wyoming's got rain. Good for you, Wyoming. I know we never turn down rain when we get it. So, all right. I think we'll go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone who's joining us today. I'm very excited to host this Shop Talk with FamilySearch. And so I'm going to turn this over to John DeJong, who is our representative from FamilySearch, and just let him take it away and explain all the projects and activities they're doing. So John, thank you for joining us today. Take it away.
Thank you, Lisa. Really appreciate that. And we're excited to be part of this and to be able to participate and work with COSA. We appreciate everyone that's doing everything they can to help increase preservation and access of records. And of course, we're particularly interested in genealogical records, but certainly all other records are important for us as citizens to be able to have access to. So we appreciate that. I'm also joined today by two of my colleagues, Steve Waters and Manny Sanhueza. Steve has responsibility primarily for the southeastern United States and Manny for the northeastern United States, plus most of Canada, at least the portions of Canada where everybody lives. And so grateful to have them. We wanted to give you an update basically on some of the recent projects and things that we've got going on in FamilySearch. We go to the next slide. And we basically have three things that we want to talk about: computer-assisted indexing, or otherwise called handwriting recognition by computers. The second one is about linking to existing images and perhaps indexes. And then the third one will be about hastening with our industry friends. So let's move to the next slide. So the next one after this. Computer-assisted indexing is brand new relatively. We started microfilming in 1938, which created about 2.4 million rolls of microfilm over the period of time. The last microfilming that I recall, I think, was a project in Indiana that actually I went and visited. That was in 2012. We may have one or two others that were scattered about the US, but that's the one I know about. And then after that, we started to take digital images, and we've been taking digital pictures since that time. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. Let's go to the next slide. And so, as you can see, we've got all this microfilm. We've actually scanned it and made it digitally available online. We finished digitizing all of that just about 1.5 years ago. And having it digitally available is great. Having it be searchable is even better. And so we created a process to index these records, meaning that we would take the most relevant information on a particular record and we would type it up into a computer database. And then later on, the patron could then type in that name and it would bring up that document that would be attached to that particular name. Of course, there can be lots of documents attached to the same name and lots of names if they're the same. And so you need to kind of sort that out when you're doing that search, but it makes it a lot easier to be able to find something rather than kind of following the microfilm process, but having it be digital. So if you're familiar with how microfilm works, you've got a roll of microfilm with maybe 1,000 images and you're rolling through them. Having the same experience but online is a little nicer, but it's much nicer to have it indexed. So you can see here, we enable people to find a project for indexing. There's basically 2 steps. You can see the Missouri one as an example at the top there, naturalization records from 1844 to 1968. And there we are 94% indexed and 94% reviewed. So people, it's a 2-step process. It's indexed by one person and then another person reviews it to make sure that it was correct and that the opinion of the initial person that did it was correct. And we have a whole process to make sure that we've got the right kind of quality. And we've got some other projects on there you can see that are in different stages. So let's go to the next slide. Here's an example of how that works. So this is an easy one because it's typed, although there is a little bit of fuzziness as the type isn't quite straight and it's mixed up with some of the other printed information that's on the form. But basically, we have a person fill out what's on the left-hand side. They type in what they see. So they typed in the petition number 62701, the name of the given names of the people. In this case, it was Elizabeth Ann Perry. Was their surname, and then the sex, the birth date, month, year, etc. And then there's other information as you go further down. But that's done. Every single thing that is, we think, genealogically significant and relevant to that individual is typed in. And if there are other individuals on that page, then you can choose to also go to the other pages. So you can see there's a second page on here as it notes image 1 of 2. Okay, let's go to the next page. Now, all of these images that we've got, almost 5 billion, through indexing, we were adding about 1 to 2 million names a day. And these were being reviewed and processed and made sure that those were available. And then, so over time, we have indexed 1.2 billion images. And we have almost, 11.5 billion, these are big numbers, names that are in the tree. That's an amazing amount of work that a lot of people have accomplished. And we have tens of thousands of people on a daily basis that will help indexing. They do that from their home. And anytime you want to help, we're happy to receive your help as well. But what's happening is that not only did we have a huge amount to start with all of this backlog, we're also taking about 150 to 170 million pictures globally every single year. And so there are more and more images that are unindexed, and we can't even keep up with it. So luckily, if we go to the next slide, there are people that have been working on using computers to do indexing. Now, we know about OCR, which is an optical character recognition, which has been around for some time, that can take type, I guess, and it can identify that, and it can create a computer entry or create a database based on the type that it looks at. The thing that's a little more difficult is handwriting recognition. And so because the computer isn't used to that, we have to teach the computer what the letter A looks like. And unfortunately, not everybody writes the letter A in the same way. And so needing to teach the computer that when it goes across and it sees a number of, it distinguishes between the black and the white portions of the page. It says, oh, there's a letter here, and this looks like an A. And so then it types an A, and it creates an A electronically in the system and saves that. Because it's all different, handwriting is all different. There are handwriting systems that have changed over time. And then there's the individual handwriting. You know, we all went to school. We all learned the same way to write, kind of. But we all have different signatures. And so all of that needs to be taken into account. So there's a number of steps. There's an image classification. What kind of an image is this? Is this a birth, marriage, death, immigration, naturalization, military, whatever? Then there's line segmentation. What we do is paragraph style indexing. And so it looks at the paragraph, and if you don't have lines that you write on, which many older documents did not, then people just generally, they write, and they may go up a little bit or they may go down a little bit. And so the segmentation, the process identifies of that line of written information, what part is it that belongs to that line and what part belongs to the line below or the line above. And that's a bit tricky. And then we get into handwriting and text recognition. So all of that does some work. And then we go through another process, which is called natural language processing, which is really identifying the differences between words and actually using an AI type process that then says the word "the" is typically a prefix. It's not necessarily a name. The city name of Amsterdam can be a city, but it could also be the last name of a person. There are people who have the last name of different cities around the world. And so it starts to look at the context of that particular word that it's looking at. And it says, this is a city and this is a name, or this is whatever. And so, and then we create the searchable index. So far, we've done 372 million names. This is in about the last year and a half. So we're just getting started that the computer has done. And it's been largely in Spanish, because we have most of the indexing that we had done with people that are volunteers have been English records, or records written in English. And we had not done much with the Spanish collections that we have. And we got a lot of requests from folks, particularly in Latin America, that were saying, look, you've got all these images. We want to have them, we want to be able to see them and be able to find our families easier. Can you please have them indexed? And so we've been doing that in Latin America, Argentina. We've now moved over into Portuguese. So we've done a lot of Brazilian records. We're moving into Italian. So let's move on to the next slide. Let me show you a little bit how this looks. So this is a record. It's in Spanish. I don't read Spanish. I know Manny does. He could help us if we need help here. But this actually, the computer, first of all, like I said, is trying to designate what kinds of words it's looking at. Now, this particular document is lined, so that makes it a lot easier. But in green, the highlights in green are names. In blue, it's a date. And you can see the dates are written out longhand here. And then the place and other types of information is in orange. So that's the first step that it goes through. Let's go to the next slide. Then after that, we take it and we put it into our system that then allows somebody to actually attach this to a name in the tree. So you might have somebody, we have one big global tree with billions of names in there. And people connect with their families that way, and they want to prove that a particular person had a particular event in their life, and they have a document that proves it. And so this enables you, by attaching this document to that person, enables you to provide the proof that that's exactly what happened. The problem here, there's a question mark here, and so there may or may not be good information. And so go to the next slide. We have some challenges that we've dealt with as we've been working with this computer. The computers are not perfect. Handwriting is really bad in some cases, and so it creates little errors that show up. So we have data quality errors. As I mentioned earlier, we have a variety of languages that we're working in. There's a couple of hundred of those around the world. And then there's handwriting and formats. It takes time to train a computer to read a particular handwriting style and have them recognize that that letter A is really a letter, it's really an A, it's not an O, or that N is an N and it's not a V, or whatever. There are all sorts of ways it can get confused. And then there's new types of metadata that are needed, like visual dimensions, how this document is put together, where the line segmentation is, et cetera. So those are some of the things that we're dealing with as we're developing these processes. Let's go to the next slide. So we are now in the process of allowing our users to help improve the data. Go to the next slide. And you can see here, after they've improved their data, then it says, success. You've done a great job. We now have a better image or better information with respect to what the computer created. Okay, next slide. So we have a number of steps that we're trying to make it easier for people to participate. So recall the indexing example where you had to basically type in a whole bunch of information, and hopefully you didn't make any errors when you're doing your typing. And of course, we had the second review to kind of catch some of those. But we're trying to make it much simpler. So we have small and simple tasks. They're unique for each different type of record. We're always adding and improving data, and it's mobile friendly. So it's called Get Involved, and we'll take you through some slides here that will show you kind of what this looks like. The next slide. So first, your choice is, what kind of records do you want to review? And you can choose the country, you can choose the language, you can even choose the state, or if you're particularly interested in a last name, let's say you want to find names that are your surname in a particular area, because you want to fix all of those first, you can actually do that. So you click on the search button, and we get to the next slide, and you can see here that there was an example. This is the last name here is Acuna, and the computer has actually highlighted this and then determined that that is what it is. It even gets the tilde above the N there. And so it actually captures exactly what's been written. You'll note down at the bottom, there's a green check mark, there's a pink, kind of a pinkish colored little pencil there. And then there's also the blue circle that has an arrow pointing to the right. The green check mark, you push that, and that means that you agree with what the computer has done. The pencil mark there, when you click on that, it allows you to make a change and then save it. And then the one to the right is if this is like totally unreadable or totally you just don't understand it, you can't figure it out, you can click on that and it sends it back into the system for someone else to do. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So here's another example. This is Domingo de la Cruz, and you can see the computer did a really good job in reading that. Okay, let's go to the next one. This is a little bit different. So this is a fellow Lucas Ojeda, and you'll see that the computer did exactly what it saw, and that is it said OJE, and then there's a dash, and then a DA. Well, that's not really what the name is, because if you read through the rest of the document, you can see that the name shows up several other times, and the name doesn't have a dash in the middle. This is a frequent thing that can happen at the end of a line when a scribe is noting something and doesn't have the room to write the rest of the name, and then we'll draw a dash and then go to the next line below, which is what happened here. So that's not the correct name, and so that needs to be fixed. So in this case, if we go to the next slide, we pushed the button, made the change, took out the dash, and then made it Ojeda, and then submitted that. So that made it so that it was corrected actually what the error was, that the computer did it correctly, but actually fixed what needed to be fixed in order to make the name searchable and have people be able to find that person. Okay, the next slide. Now, when you're all done, and in this case, there were 20 people that you could do. If you want to continue, you can, give me another 20 names to go find, or 30 or 50, or no limit means you're just going to sit there all day and keep doing this. Or you can say, you know what, I'll just do this later. So you can click maybe later, and that ends your session. Typical session will last about 15 minutes or so. We try to do these in really easy to complete chunks. it works the same way on your phone as it does on the computer. And so sometimes when people are standing in line at the bank, I've seen this, they want to, fix a couple names, and they do that. It's a great experience. A lot of people are involved in doing this. Okay, next slide. As I mentioned, you can do this on your phone. So we have over 200,000 users of our Get Involved app that have reviewed 372 million names. And again, we've got more languages and more countries coming soon. So, as I said, we've got Spanish, Portuguese, we're working on Italian, and I think French is next after that. So all of those languages and then we'll go beyond that and continue to grow in our capability. Each of those have the same challenges where the computer has to learn to read. The computer doesn't know whether it's French or Spanish, but it needs to know what letters mean what, and also needs to know the context of the word. So we're teaching the computer also some contextual elements to words and names, etc., that are within the language. So it kind of chooses and gives you the right information. Okay, next one. So we encourage people to try it out. So, if you get a chance to see this later on, or if you can't write this down fast enough, try it and see if you like it. It's available on the Apple Store, Google Play, etc. It's a fun activity, and it really helps people. It's a pay it forward activity. All right, next one. Now, what's happening as a result of all this? Computer-assisted indexing will learn to read all of the handwritten documents. And we're doing this, we're not just picking up names, it's actually grabbing every word that's on a page and making it readable, putting it in the computer and making it searchable. And, having people being participants in this whole process increases quality and accuracy, because by participating and making the changes where the computer did something wrong or got something incorrect or needed some help, all of that is fed back into the computer. So it's kind of a virtual cycle. It learns from what other people are doing, and it makes it a better system as it does the work to transcribe all of these documents. And then all sorts of metadata and search experiences are going to become possible. We're doing a lot of work right now with the ChatGPT artificial intelligence type work, where we're taking a document, and I've seen this. I saw a demonstration of this the other day where they took a document that was a will, and they ran it through the standard process of scanning it and identifying individuals and doing all of that. And then it said, then they asked ChatGPT, they said, okay, write a story about this document. And then it wrote a story at a ninth grade level. And it wrote this entire story telling about what was in the document, that there was one person who was the daughter of somebody who received inheritance and all of this. And it just became a useful document rather than all the legalese that was in there. It made it so that you could understand it. It's just a start. We're really looking and trying to figure out how can you make a document more accessible. So not only names, dates, and places, but what's actually going on in this particular document. Okay, the next page. So now we're going to talk about a different topic, and this is linking to existing images and indexes. You go ahead and go to the next page. So we, over time, FamilySearch has been taking a lot of pictures, as I mentioned. Steve, Manny, and myself have worked with a lot of archivists around the United States and Canada to set up projects to digitize images and make them available on our website. And what we're finding now is that oftentimes, because there's a total of 5 that are actually working in North America without counting Mexico, to work with archivists and other records custodians, museums, libraries, etc. There's just way too much work out there for us to be able to work with folks and get projects signed up. We only have 72 cameras that we're deploying around the United States and Canada. And oftentimes archives have decided on their own, look, I need to make stuff available for my patrons that are coming in here saying, why can't you put this stuff online? And so that's happening as well. And so we're talking about this concept of linking. And you can see that we've got a couple 100 million annual site visits to the FamilySearch website. So we have a lot of traffic to our website. And what we're thinking about is how can we help you in the work that you're doing to make your website more useful and more beneficial and more widely known. So let's go to the next couple pages here. So we've got some examples here. Here's Oregon that's got a website. You can see genealogy records is one of the things that they have on there. The next slide has South Carolina and Washington. The following slide, you've got a couple more states here, Indiana and Alabama. Each of these sites, you notice as we're going through there, they're all different in different ways, and they focus on different kinds of collections and to encourage people to either, just put a name in, like the Indiana, you can put some name in and it'll find records that are there, or you can go to specific digital collections in some cases. In some cases, you can actually see the images that are there. In other cases, they're asking for, they're selling a copy of the image, or maybe it's a special image that's got a stamp on it that says this is an official document. In other cases, we've seen where they'll put for not for official use, this is genealogical use only, and they may have two different processes, where one is one that if you're using it for official use, it may require a payment, and if it's for genealogical use, it can be free. So there's all sorts of different ways that people are making these records available and starting to do this. Go to the next page. Here's another one, which is Maryland. They've got a number of different databases. I understand the earliest marriage record that they've got is from 1634. That's a long time ago. And so it's amazing to be able to have access to these materials. If you're living in California, it could be too expensive to go all the way out to Maryland to try to figure out where your family came from. And so having access to these types of materials online is a great benefit. Okay, the next slide. So what do we do? What are we recommending? What would we like to see happen in the future? We will continue to take pictures, and we'll continue to index, and we'll continue to use CAI, computer-assisted indexing, to make images available on the FamilySearch website. We're trying to be kind of the Walmart of family history, to make things easy to find across geographies, because people do move around, and particularly in the United States, where the old "Go West, young man" type of thing that was going on in the 1800s, where people were, it settled in one place, but they just kept moving and moving. And so having one state to look at and to try to find in that state, you don't know what other state they may have lived in, that becomes difficult. So when we've got multiple collections across geographies, really across the world, then it makes it much easier for people to find their family. Now, we have one portion of our website is called Search Historical Records. That's one where you can actually, when you look at records, you can actually type in a name and it will go find a particular name, and you can put in a locality and a year. And so that makes it easier. There's some more options that will give you more information that you can put in, as much as you can that will make it easier to focus in on the name that you're trying to find. You may have a John Smith. That would be unlucky because there's a lot of John Smiths around. It would be hard to distinguish one from the other. But if you've got an unusual name, life's a little bit easier if you're doing research. And in this case, we also, when we do the linking, it's okay, so how does this happen? So you can see here under there, it's got the, So one of the choices here is historical records, and you can click on that, and then you can choose this particular collection. So let's go to the next slide. And down here, you can type in what collection you might want to look at. So you may want to look at New York State, and then we'll have a specific collection title. It could be births, marriages, whatever it might be. So if we go to the next slide, in this case, we actually have linked to West Virginia births. We also have marriages and we have deaths. So we have a collection, West Virginia births from 1853 to 1930. You type in information, and this is John A. Johnson as an example, in Hancock County, West Virginia, and a year of 1873. And then you just click search. So the next slide, you'll get a result, and this is what it looks like. And it says, okay, these are all the John Johnsons we have. And we take some flexibility because people may make some mistakes or may not know exactly which John Johnson it is. So in this case, we've got John A, John W, there's a John Robert, there's a John Johnson, there's a Stella. I don't know how Stella ended up in there, but people can start looking and see, okay, is this my John Johnson? And then on the right-hand side, you can see where the little boxes, the little document is circled with the red box there. You click on that document part and it will take you to a link to where the document is. So if we click to the next slide, this is the page that you would get. And it shows John Johnson at the top. This has all the information related to this particular person. This document record is already attached to his name in the family tree. You can read that on the right-hand side. And then there's also some other records that are similar that you might want to research. And so that's in the US Census, a couple of different censuses. So the 1900, it looks like the 1880. It's kind of hard for my eyes to spot that. And then you would click on the image on the left-hand side, and that would take you directly to the West Virginia website and the document that's there. Okay, let's go to the next page. So having this kind of process, we believe and we've seen, will actually drive traffic to your website because people want to see those documents. And so by clicking on that link, it enables you to be able to have people come to your website that might not normally come there. They may not be in your state. And we've had folks tell us, look, I'm not sure I want to put everything online because people may not be coming in my building so much anymore. How do I justify this whole building and everything that we're doing? And the justification is really, well, you're actually providing a service to your citizens and you're now providing greater service. And we've seen massive increases in usage of materials when people are able to access them online than just coming into a building to go look at stuff. And we've learned a lot from the COVID pandemic where people are, I think, more germ conscious and more willing to say, look, I'm not going to risk going to a place where a whole bunch of people are going to be that might make me sick. So I'd rather be online and be able to access stuff that way. So you've got linking to your site, not only from people around your locality, but also from across the state and across the country. We'd like to help bring traffic to your website to do that. Secondly, if you've got a collection that you've got images online, but you don't have an index, we can help you with indexing. And we'll focus on the genealogically significant type of records because that's what we're about. And we can talk about those kinds of experiences and how we'd like to set that up. The third one, you might go, what are you talking about with being an insurance company? Well, in a way, we've been an insurance company for records custodians ever since we started this work. Over the years, there have been disasters throughout the world that have happened. And there are all sorts of things that can happen. And what we've done in the past, when we had microfilm, we would make copies of the microfilm if a place had been destroyed, and we would give them copies of their microfilm back to them so that they would be able to have their documents again. And now that it's digital, we do the same thing with digital images. Okay, go to the next slide. And so what we want to do is we want to really work together and provide access through preservation and identify opportunities. And we'll be talking to you, or we'll be happy to have you call us up and say, how can we do this? Because we'd love to see a way that we can link and benefit from being able to get more people to use our website. We would love to talk with you about that. Okay, next slide. So this is the third one, and this is hastening with our industry friends. So we used to call people that we work with partners, but we've decided they're really our friends. And so that's what we call other commercial organizations who we work with. Ancestry is one of those, and we've done a number of projects with Ancestry over the years. I actually am responsible, as part of my role, to work with the National Archives, and I've been doing that for 11 years now. And we've had a number of projects that we've worked on together. Sometimes we will image the records, we'll create a digital image, and they will do indexing, and other times it's the other way around. They will take the pictures and we will do the indexing. And so we've got a great relationship, and we've done similar things with other genealogical companies around the world where we've worked together because there is so much work that needs to be done. And so we have a project I'm going to talk about here shortly. And we have other friends that will be also joining us. So you might say, why? Why are you doing that? And we'll go to the next slide here. You can see this, I mentioned kind of disasters. Maui is the most recent perfect example, sadly, of records that have been destroyed. Their old courthouse that was there in Lahaina was completely gutted and destroyed by fire. They've lost a lot of things that are there. And we've gone through our inventory of things that we've got, and we're going to be able to provide them documents back that they have lost if we had them. Of course, if we didn't have them, then there's nothing that we can provide back. But this is a great example that, you know, they'd never expected that this would happen, that they would have this kind of a fire. You know, you never really know what kinds of things might happen. So that's one reason, is that make sure that we can provide that opportunity. And these things happen all over the world, and they happen frequently. Let's go to the next one. So we're global. As I mentioned earlier, we have over 350 cameras around the world. They take about 175 million pictures a year, and we're continuing to increase cameras to that entire collection. And we are very, very anxious to want to preserve as much as possible. We're in the process of building what we consider the global tree of mankind, humankind. And so really to make it possible for people to connect with each other and know what their roots were, where they came from, so that they have a better, they feel more interconnected. And we've learned through research with teenagers that if they find out who they were and where they came from, they tend to be less delinquent, and they tend to feel better about themselves and feel better about life. So this is a global thing. It's not something that's just in the US. Okay, the next slide. This will tell you how many images we have, or cameras we have in the US. We have over 72. We take about 30 million pictures. You can see we're not everywhere, but as we finish in one location, we'll move to the next. And we've just kind of, this map constantly shifts as projects are completed and we set up a new project in a different location. Okay, next slide. So as I mentioned earlier, we're building the global tree of humankind. There are over 80 billion humans that have lived in the past 2,000 years, and Chinese records go back almost 3,500 years. We have, and they're actually written in books called Japu, which are genealogical records. They're patrilineal lineage books that go back and then come forward. And so they do it different. They don't start with themselves and go back. They start with their ancient ancestor and bring that information forward. And we have about half of those. And we're working with folks in China to digitize the other half so that all of that information will be available for those folks. But yet, as a result, there's historical information on billions of people that still needs to be preserved. So it is a huge, we're boiling the ocean here, which is why FamilySearch can't do it by itself. And we really rely on our industry friends to enable us to help make that happen. So let's go to the next slide. One great example, unfortunately, is Ukraine. For a number of years, we were working to try to get some projects going in Ukraine, and we finally got one underway. And then pretty soon, other archivists in Ukraine said, yeah, that's a great idea. And so we had about 30 cameras that were on the ground working to digitize records. And then the war started. Russia has not been kind. As they've gone in and taken over cities, they've destroyed the records. And so there's a sense of urgency in the country of Ukraine to preserve and protect their records that they've got. The National Archivist of Ukraine came to our annual Roots Tech session in February this year and was here in Salt Lake City. I visited with him. He is not a person that you would call ebullient. I mean, he's very, I think he's saddened by everything that's going on in Ukraine and frustrated. So as a result of him coming and kind of explaining all of their needs and the concerns that they have with losing records to this man-made destruction, we've agreed with them that we would increase the number of cameras significantly so that we can help to facilitate the work that they're doing to help preserve the records there. And I was in a meeting a couple of months ago where one of our colleagues in Ukraine was explaining a project that their camera operator was working on, taking pictures, and a bomb exploded outside the building. And luckily, nobody in his vicinity was hurt, but the glass blew in on the floor that they were on and actually landed on the books that he was imaging. So after things kind of settled down, he got up, he wiped the glass off, and then continued to take pictures. I personally can't imagine being under that kind of stress to do a job, but they're so committed to preserving. And we have worked with them to make sure that our processes, our back-end processes are so efficient and fast that we're taking pictures as quickly as possible and serving and preserving these records. So another example. Okay, let's go to the next page. So we're just getting started. Now we've got almost 17 billion searchable names and images in the historical records. We have over 500,000 books, and we're continuing to scan books in libraries around the country and around the world. We have, as I mentioned, we have the one single family tree. If you think of 80 billion, we're only at like 1.5. So we've got a long ways to go to put people in this big family tree. And we have 2.5 billion sources. So again, lots of work that still needs to be done. Next page. So the pilot program that we're doing with Ancestry is one where we have 72 cameras in North America, but it's not enough to do all the work that needs to be done. So they've agreed to work with us to do imaging and indexing using their cameras and their operators. They will provide us with the images and the indexes, so we don't have to wait for indexing to be taken care of by our volunteers who are busy still working on the backlog. We provide free copies of the images and the indexes to the archives, whether that's libraries, museums, courts, archivists at the state level or local level. We have some county archives around the country, some consolidated groups. All of them, they get free copies if they'd like to have those. They're also available for free online at on the FamilySearch website, so both the images and the indexes. And because of the investment that, in this case, Ancestry has put forward, because it costs money to image and index, they also have those records, those images and indexes available on their website. Participation in this is optional, but we're encouraging it. We really would love to see this happen as fast and as quickly and as expansive as possible. And we will expand this to other organizations that we work with so that we can have the ability to preserve and protect records. And we're learning here with Ancestry and initially in the United States, and we will probably spread this out throughout the world because there is just so much work that needs to be done. Okay, next slide. So we invite you to join us in the work that we're doing. This is a journey, and it starts, this is the old, how do you eat an elephant? You do it one bite at a time, and we're doing this one little teeny bite at a time as we're doing this work. That we can all benefit from the computer-assisted indexing, handwriting recognition work that's going on, and all of those AI type initiatives that help make records more easily understandable and available. We'd love to work with you on linking to your existing collections and collections that may not be in your locality, but that you know about, that we might not know about. We'd love to hear about those and see how we can help with that. And then finally, to hasten preservation and access to these records. I've put the emails here of our key people here in the United States. So Rob Jackson, Dan Pay, Manuel Sanhueza, and Steve Waters, and then myself at the bottom. We would love to hear from you. We appreciate all the work that's being done by COSA. And to, your motto, I don't know it's exactly the motto, but it's about preservation and access. And we're completely aligned in all of that to help to preserve and provide access, have people learn from the past to be able to help them in the future. I think we have a couple of other slides here, maybe some questions. So thank you very much. And this is the question part. So Lisa, I'll let you manage this part.
Sounds good. So I don't see any questions in chat, but now's your chance. If you have something, you can type it in chat or you can raise your hand. We'll unmute you and you can just ask your question. So John, this sounds like this is some exciting things happening on the forefront. I imagine the thing where you took and extracted the information from the will and then had AI write a story about it. That should be interesting going forward, looking for, that'll make things, I hope, somewhat easier for people to really get a sense of what that document means.
Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, they can make it fun too. They say, okay, write this in a snarky manner. And so it puts a little twist on it. So there's a lot of creativity you can do, but the purpose is, at least from our standpoint, as we're trying to help people, is to make it easier for them to understand what's in the documents. And particularly when we're dealing with court records that can be filled with a lot of legalese. And if you can just say, make this simple to understand, any 10-year-old can understand what's being said here or what's being written. It's a start, right? I'm just giving you a little glimpse here, but we're going to see this happen more as we move forward into time.
That's great. Anybody have any questions for John? Here we go. All right. So this is coming from Sean Rounds. She says, with apologies, could you please tell us again what those state archive sites were that you highlighted?
Yeah, if I can remember. So Maryland was one, South Carolina. Help me out, Steve and Manny. Let's see, the state of Washington.
You had Alabama up there.
Alabama.
Indiana was
Indiana.
one.
I think those were the 5 that we had, but there are others.
Just examples. Yeah, those were just examples.
I think North Carolina has got a really great website. Hawaii is working on theirs. They've got stuff, and we're working very closely with them to digitize materials and get them available online. I think California's got stuff. So I didn't get a chance to go through all 50 states. I just wanted to show a couple of examples that are out there right now, but there's a lot.
Thank you, Sean. That was a great question. Anybody
Yes.
else have anything? You can raise your hand. We can unmute you, or go ahead and type it in chat. So obviously, if people are curious about any of the things you've talked about, your emails are there, and we can certainly, if they didn't capture them, we can certainly get them in touch with you guys so that they can ask you some direct questions, or you guys can have conversations about the areas that they're particularly interested in.
Absolutely. Yeah. If they'll contact you, you've got a straight line to me. So that's maybe the easiest way. So
that sounds good. Anybody else have any questions? Well, we're going to proceed with the rest of the slides just to close it out. But if a question comes up before we finish, we'll gladly share it with John and company. So We hope you enjoyed today's Shop Talk. We love highlighting our partners. And so I think there's one more coming up later in November this year. So we hope you'll join us for that. But first, we have our member webinar, which is the 28th. And this will be on advocacy. And our advocacy committee is going to share some information. This year was advocacy on the Hill in Washington. So we're going to talk about advocacy in general. And then Louisiana has had some really good advocacy efforts. So they're going to share some tips of what they have learned, and hopefully you can share some of the things you've learned as well. Next slide. Our Siri webinar, last Tuesday was their monthly webinar, but October 10th is Electronic Records Day, and they are planning a program. So do check it out and log on to help us celebrate Electronic Records Day. Next slide. Of course, there's lots of ways to contact COSA. We hope you'll reach out however you need to or want to. And next slide. So we want to thank you for joining us today. There may or may not be a link to an evaluation. If there is, please take a moment, fill it out. It really does give us some feedback for the Education Committee as they're planning future programs. So with that, I'd like to thank John and Steve and Manny for joining us today. And any last words for us?
Just thank you so much for all you're doing. We really appreciate your effort. I think we feel like we're friends together working on the same thing to enable people to have access to their historical records.
Well, we appreciate the work you're doing. We appreciate your partnership with COSA. So thank you guys so much for joining us today for Shop Talk with FamilySearch. And I hope we'll see you again at a future event. Take care. Have a great weekend. We'll see you at the next COSA event.
Right. Thank you so much.